Moving on to the Russian man who loves his family, Heavy Weapons Guy. Here we'll analyze every single one of Heavy's unique weapons, so no reskins. I will also give a fact about each one of them. Let's go. Brass Beast, released December 17th, 2010. Amazing for Man vs. Machine. The number one go-to as it offers a direct damage bonus which cannot be found in the upgrades. Though, in casual, this minigun is pretty hard to use, with the slow spin up and the movement speed penalty while spun up. It leaves you extremely vulnerable. Not ideal. D tier. Trivia. This weapon didn't originally release with the 20% damage resistance when spun up below 50% health, which made it even more of a risk to use. Actually, in the Gunmetal update of 2015, when this attribute was added in the first place, and it was both added to the Brass Beast and Natasha, it gave you a 20% damage resistance when spun up regardless of HP. The Buffalo Steak Sandwich, released December 17th, 2010 alongside the Brass Beast. This weapon is actually kind of fun to mess around with, which is kind of what you're supposed to do in TF2 anyway, though it's not practical and it's a joke of a secondary weapon. D tier. Trivia. Like other lunchbox items, the Buffalo Steak could not be thrown down for teammates. The Buffalo Steak also made you take mini crits before this was eventually changed to 25% damage taken, which was also not true because the real number was actually 10%. This was fixed in Meet Your Match, so it actually, made you take 25% more damage. And then finally in the Jungle Inferno update, the duration of the steak was increased from 15 seconds to 16 whole seconds. I know, big change there. And the damage vulnerability was reduced from 25% to 20%. The DeLocos Bar, added March 18th, 2010. I actually kind of like this weapon. I enjoy the effect, the extra health boost is appreciated, plus it puts you past at least 2 major thresholds of damage. You can now survive 3 direct pills, and 2 quickscope headshots if you were consuming it at full HP. With that being said, it is overshadowed by the second banana and sandwich. C tier. Trivia. First one. I feel like everybody knows this at this point if you've been in the TF2 sphere. It's kind of common knowledge almost. But in case you don't, DeLocos spelled backward is chocolade, which roughly translates to chocolate in Russian. Number 2. Originally had to be replenished by picking up health packs, as it didn't actually have a recharge feature that it does now. This is how old lunchbox items used to work. And number 3, after July of 2015, eating the bar at full health would take you to 400 HP overheal before decaying down to 350. This is no longer how it works, because of an exploit involving the DeLocos bar and the gloves of running urgent labor of 2017, which allowed the Heavy to gain massive amounts of health. If any of you were around in that time, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. There were people getting into the thousands and tens of thousands of health, if not higher. When the exploit was patched, the Locust bar stopped giving overheal. The Eviction Notice, added June 23rd, 2011. This weapon's really weird. A little brother to the Groove, but just not as good. It still has a niche, and it's kind of fun to use, but overall, it's not that great of a weapon. Very, very low C tier. Maybe even D tier, but for now I'll just leave it in C tier. Trivia. When the weapon originally came out, it was not the little brother that grew, but it sucked. On screen are the stats of the Eviction Notice when it launched. Yeah, the weapon was pretty useless, arguably worse than it is now. You would eventually receive the 3-second speed boost on hit, and later the additional movement speed and damage vulnerability that would cement it as the Grew's little brother. The Family Business, added in the same update, June 23rd, 2011. Great for Fat Scout, not really much to say. It's a shame that it's a heavy-only weapon, as other classes, especially Engineer, could likely get far more use out of this than the Heavy can. With that being said, C tier. Trivia. When it came out, it lacked the plus 15% firing speed stat that it has now, so it was just plus 2 shells minus some damage weapon. It also used to have a plus 40% clip size bonus, but this would just be rounded down from 8.4 to 8, so it had no actual bearing on the weapon. It was simply a visual change. The Fist of Steel, added December 17th, 2010. A great utility item. The Fist of Steel is not just good for survivability when you're getting pepper from afar, but also good for helping you to build Uber due to the minus 40% health from healers and minus 40% max overheal stat. Which sounds bad, but because of how the Medigun works, the fact that max overheal is never reached, and overheal is slow, the Medigun will build Uber very quickly. Similar to why people use the Bossa Masher and Escape Plan to help build Medic's Uber pre-game. B tier. Trivia. When the Fist of Steel was added to the game, it lacked a red skin. However, when one was added, it was very bright red, which would eventually be toned down. The Fist, added October 10th, 2007. The Fists are just a stock melee, not bad, but there's much better options for heavy. D tier. Trivia. In the early beta, heavy had no gloves, though in later versions, blue and red gloves can be found. Now, in-game, it is black regardless of team. The Gru, the gloves running originally. Added September 30th, 2010. Fine weapon. At one time, this weapon was a must-have, as there was very little reason not to run it. In Jungle Inferno, though, they changed the stat from taking mini-crits for 3 seconds after holstering, to slowly draining your max health over time, 10 per second, down to 100 health. It's still a good melee, but it has much more of a risk factor than it did a little over 6 years ago. It used to be damn near S tier, but now it sits more comfortably around the B tier. Trivia. In early closed betas, apparently, the gloves are running urgently was planned to simply reduce Heavy's health by 100, down from 300 to 200. When it was added to the game, the stat was changed to a minus 6 health per second while equipped. This is a little bit different than how it works today. It actually took 6 health per second, not just reducing your max health. Like, it legitimately subtracted 6 health. It was possible to die from just having this weapon out because there was no minimum. The Holiday Punch, added December 15th, 2011. The Holiday Punch is kind of a joke weapon, but even with that, it actually isn't that bad. You just rarely see anyone, legitimately using it, usually just hoovies throwing sandwiches, but it actually does have some utility. You can actually make Uber players go into a forced taunt, which is pretty neat. With that being said, B tier. Trivia. The Holiday Punch has an unused black Yushenka officer style that was supposed to ship with the weapon. Hopefully I put a photo of that on screen. The Huo Long Eater, however you pronounce it, I know that's wrong. I've looked up the actual pronunciation and I'm not going to practice for hours just to say it right, so I'm going to call it the Huo Long Heater. The Huo Long Heater was added August 2nd, 2012. The heater, honestly, is just kind of taking up space. It's not bad in general, but compared to other miniguns, it sucks. The passive ammo consumption when spun up is not great, and the fact that the fire ring can be simply jumped over or tanked makes it pretty much useless. D tier. Trivia. There's actually a lot about the Huo Long Heater, but I'm not super qualified to talk about it, as I've never really looked into it all that much. There are some cool concept art pieces and early models of the Huo Long Heater. I believe it was actually supposed to shoot some sort of projectile in its early concept stages, if I remember that correctly. But just so I don't BS you, one piece of 100% true trivia is the fact that the Huo Long Heater used to consume 6 rounds while spun up per second, before being lowered to 4 in the Meet Your Match update. The Killing Gloves of Boxing, added August 19th, 2008. The KGB is a fine weapon, the crits on kill are awesome, and it's capable of causing mayhem in medieval mode matches. But even with that, B tier. The KGB has gone through no balance changes in the 15 years it has been in the game, standing the test of time. Though, according to the wiki, there's an unused version of the KGB that would grant everyone around you 50 HP as well as increase their crit chance by 10% for the downside of taunting after every kill. However, I don't know how true this is, as I've never heard that before making this video. So take that with a grain of salt. The minigun, also released with the game on October 10th, 2007. What is there to say? The minigun is an all-around phenomenal choice. High DPS, no major downsides, very simple, very effective. A tier. Trivia. Another weapon with a surprising amount of history. The minigun, like the flamethrower, was a little bit worse than it is currently on launch. though it's a little bit better than the flamethrower was on launch. It used to spin up 25% slower than it does now, being more similar to the Natasha's current spin up time, which is 30%. It used to move slower when spun up. You moved at 80 hammer units rather than 110. And some of you may not know this, but Engineers buildings have a resistance to minigun fire. It was previously 20% for level 2s and 33% for level 3s. Though in the gunmetal update, the level 2 resistance was lowered to 15% and the level 3's resistance was lowered all the way down to 20%. The only thing the minigun had on launch that made it better is the fact it didn't have the spin up and damage ramp up it had for the first second after spun up that it does now. The Natasha, added August 19, 2008. The Natasha, a weapon that all new players seem to gravitate towards and veterans hate. The weapon is good, no getting around that, it's just super annoying to play against. One good thing is that at least it scales now. With the old Natasha, you could be halfway across the map, have your pinky toe hit with a bullet, and be slowed down to a crawl. Had no fall off like it does now. Either way, this weapon is a B tier weapon. Trivia, a decent amount for this one. Early versions of the Natasha were planned and had a similar effect to the Blitzauger. It was originally called the Ludmilla, by the way, giving the health back on hit rather than slowing people down. I honestly kind of prefer that. It'd be a little bit less annoying, though it could be kind of hard to balance. 2. The Natasha only had 2 stats on release, slow down on hit and a damage penalty, which was a bit bugged and sometimes would not be quite 25%. The 30% spin-up penalty was added around the time the base minigun received an increased spin-up speed. And lastly, another stat fact about the Natasha is that for a short while, the Natasha would hold 300 rounds and had a 50% clip size bonus. This was secretly removed in the gunmetal update. The Panic Attack, added December 22nd, 2014. The current Panic Attack is not that bad, but it's often overshadowed by the class's other shotgun options. Pyro has the flare guns, Soldier has the banners and boots, Heavy has the lunchbox items, and Engie, while it's a bit more practical, has the Frontier Justice and Rescue Ranger. This weapon is often just left in a person's backpack to collect dust. C tier. Trivia. Alright, history time, because there's really no interesting tidbits about it, so basically I'm just going to share the weapon's history. The original attributes of the Panic Attack were much different and kind of weird. It originally worked like a budget's beggar's bazooka, where you would start at 0, load up all the shots, and then release them in rapid succession. This weapon was not very good. They would eventually fluff up the numbers a little bit, like the reload and switch speed, and add the ability to store shells rather than automatically firing once you reach 4. Oh yeah, by the way, it originally had a secret clip size penalty. This did not fix it. It would need a complete rework, and it got one in the Jungle Inferno update. Working like it does now, firing in a fixed pattern with 5 extra pellets, and having a spread that increases for each successive shot until you stop firing or until you reload. Though, when it was initially changed, the weapon was still not that good. The spread would get ridiculous and the damage penalty hurt. It originally was 30%. Finally, in the Blue Moon, the max spread was reduced by 40% and the damage penalty was lowered to 20%, making it easier to use and actually being able to take advantage of the extra pellets. The Sandwich, added August 19, 2008. S tier. For real though, this is Heavy's best utility item outside of maybe the second banana. There's very little reason not to run this if you are running a serious Heavy loadout. Trivia. This one's got some history, but I'll list short facts for you instead. 1. The Sandwich originally only healed for 120 health rather than bringing you up to full. 2. The Sandwich used to not have a recharge mechanic, having to pick up health packs while at full HP in order to replenish. You can actually still do this now. 3. The Sandwich couldn't be dropped until a year later. When it was dropped, it acted as a medium health kit. And lastly, drop sandwiches used to not allow you to pick them up, instead acting as a medium health pack for you. Some heavies would use this instead of taunting for a quick 150 health, which may be more beneficial than a 4-second animation to get back to full health. Second banana, added October 20th, 2017. The second banana is actually pretty good. While it's hard to top the sandwich for its utility, the second banana gives it a run for its money. The faster recharge allows you to heal more over time. It's less useful for your medic, acting as a small health kit instead of a medium. But other than that, if you're a solo heavy, it isn't a bad idea to maybe swap out your beloved sandwich and give this one a try. A tier. Trivia. There's not much for this one because it hasn't been out for very long in the grand scheme of TF2, even though it's been out for 6 years. Despite claiming to recharge 50% faster, which means it should take 15 seconds to recharge, it actually recharges 66% faster, as it only takes 10 seconds for the banana to complete its cooldown. The Shotgun, added October 10th, 2007. The Shotgun is TF2's bread and butter. It is one of the few games to do shotguns right. It feels powerful, but isn't blatantly overpowered in any way, taking 2 shots for lighter and medium classes, 3 for soldiers, and 4 for heavies. The shotgun is often thrown out in favor of other items pretty quickly, and for the heavy it does kind of make sense, but with the other 3 classes, Engie, Pyro, and Soldier, I actually find myself coming back to the shotgun a lot because of its reliability. B tier. Trivia. For all classes before September 30th, 2010, they had a slightly different reload speed. Heavy even had a completely different reload animation. This was standardized to get rid of any variance between the classes using their shotguns. Svetlana, aka the Tomislav, added June 23rd, 2011. Often pondered whether this thing is a straight upgrade to stock. At one time it was, but we'll get to that. Currently, the Tomislav effectively offers a faster spin-up for a slightly slower firing speed and a little bit more accuracy. The Tomislav is a great option if you just don't feel like running the regular minigun anymore. A tier. Trivia. As many of you are aware, it has always had a faster spin-up speed, though it used to be absolutely stupid. Currently, the Tomislav sits at a comfortable 20% faster spin-up speed, which is respectable. Though, when this thing came out during the Uber update, it had an astounding 75% spin-up speed, though it lacked the accuracy bonus. This made it near instant. It would be on the 28th of that same month and year that Valve would notice and tone it down to just 40%. This was still really good and made it an excellent pick over the miniguns overall. It would stay like this for about a year until the Pyromania update in 2012, where the 40% faster spin-up was reduced to just 10%. This ended the reign of terror for the Tomislav. Remember, at the time it still did not have the accuracy bonus, so it was 10% faster, silent spin-up, for a 20% slower firing speed, usually not worth it. It wouldn't be until the gunmetal of 2015 that the weapon finally would be given a buff, increasing the spin speed from 10% to 20%, and adding a nice little 20% accuracy bonus as well. Extra fun fact, Tomislav used to have a different model in its early stages, looking like this, fully rendered, and this in the concept art. The Warrior Spirit, added December 17th, 2010. It's cool that this thing does the most base damage of any melee weapon in the game, 85 to players, 84 to buildings, and 115 when paired with the stake doing mini crits. Not counting the Ullpool Caber, which technically can do more damage, but only once, and then the base damage goes down to 55. While this is the case, this weapon is just kind of bad. It was part of the Hibernating Bear set, and included in that set was the Brass Beast, Buffalo Stake, and the Big Chief Cosmetic. Despite the fact that these weapons have little to no synergy, the set as a whole is just not great. The Warrior Spirit is just too much of a risk for a minute reward. D tier. Trivia. Wearing the original Hibernating Bear set, back when set bonuses were a thing, would grant a heavy, 5% crit resistance on wear. Did this really do anything? I think it allowed you to survive a fully charged headshot at full overheal, but oh wait, no it didn't, because guess what? This brings us into the second point. The Warrior Spirit original stats were 30% damage bonus for 20 less health on wear, bringing the heavy's base health to 280. This made it where its max overheal was 420, and a fully charged headshot could still do 428 damage. So this set bonus was just stupid. Point number 3. It wasn't until Gunmetal that they added the 10 HP stat on hit, which was quickly changed in the Tough Break update only 5 months later to 50 HP on kill. And also in the Tough Break update, they removed the health penalty and added a 30% damage vulnerability. This kind of sounds like a good thing, as you don't have to risk just your health, right? You don't have to risk having a lower health pool for just having this thing on you. But here's the glaring issue. The Warrior Spirit is meant to be used with the Buffalo Stake. They're in the same set after all. When you originally used the Buffalo Stake, you would take mini crits on top of having 280 HP. This made your effective health 182. However, now the stake only makes you take 20% more damage, however with a 30% damage vulnerability on top of it. This makes your effective health 168. While yes, fall off does come into play, and if you're getting peppered from afar, you're more likely to survive, but your effective health is still 14 lower than it previously was, and that previous number was still really low. It was even worse for a while when the Buffalo Stake had a 25% damage vulnerability, giving you effectively 10 less health at 158, but overall, the Warrior Spirit is just, it has bad synergy with all the items in its set, and its downside is just a bit too harsh for justifying using it most of the time. It technically isn't bad always, being quite decent in medieval mode, but still, it's just not that great.